at 2905 J Avenue. You see the parcel on the right-hand side here. There will be a parcel split that occurs on this site. It is currently listed as a single parcel. Essentially, there's a existing house on the one side, and then there is an existing garage on the southeastern corner. Next slide. These are some photos of surrounding context in terms of houses, both street side and across the street. Next slide. And some examples of, again, a house on the left-hand side there with the turret, and then the house on the right-hand side. Next slide. This is the survey that was conducted by Civil in terms of the proposed lot splits. And here you can see where the existing home is and where the existing garage is. Next slide. This is our site plan showing basically the new 3-story residence, the existing garage that is to be replaced. We are maintaining the existing curb cut onto Waco Court. And then there's a rather large tree that actually hangs over the alleyway, over the adjacent property. That tree will be removed. It was the wish at Block Club from the neighboring residences that that tree be removed. Next slide. This is the proposed landscape plan. In front of the house, there will be ornamental boxwoods added, as you can see. And then the picture on the lower right shows the tree to be removed. And you can see how it's essentially overhanging not only the alleyway, but the neighboring houses as well. Next slide. This is an example of the floor plans. Foundation plan, first floor plan, second floor plan, and then the third floor consists exclusively of the turret. Next slide. This is a demonstration of material samples for color reference. One thing you will note, brick was previously shown. That has been removed. That was one of the design recommendations that was made previously. And again, you can see that on the next page, you can see the siding specification that we're using, which is going to be a smooth, hardy plank, fiber composite cement board siding. Next slide. Now, there were a few design considerations that were raised previously in terms of the proportion of the tower in relation to the front facade, in terms of the roof slopes for that tower, and the brick that was initially shown at the entry point on the first floor. Some of the considerations we've made here, we've increased the front facade of the main portion proportionally to get it more in line with the tower size. The other thing we did was we lowered the profile of the tower, the turret roof, to make it consistent with the rest of the roof profiles. So those were the major design considerations that we took into account from your recommendations last meeting. Next slide. In addition to this, a new garage will replace the existing in the same footprint. This is a 22-foot by 26-foot footprint, and it will be a 2-level garage. Next slide. The other consideration that was taken into account that we modified was to lower the roof slope on the garage to make it consistent with the house. Any questions?
Not yet.
Oh, are you through with your presentation?
Yes.
Um, I'll begin by reiterating, I think the concerns that we, as a group, expressed last time you were before us. The turret, or as you called it, the tower, it's a little bit too dominating over the more traditional house structure. And I think it gives it a sense of ill proportion and inappropriateness for the street. The one of the images you showed of another house there on J as a print that is much more subservient in a way to the main house and is an architectural feature and not overbearing and too dominant. I think that's what you have here. I appreciate that you've removed the brick. I think the windows on the front facade there need to be separated. There needs to be some space between them. That's a very 1950s sort of or suburban construction method to have those windows blocked or grouped together like that. And at the bottom of the turret, there's one window there at the bottom right that appears to be skinnier than all the rest. And it's unclear why that would be. I would recommend they would all be the same size. And those same window comments apply to both the side and rear of the house as well. The window material, are those aluminum clad wood windows?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, those are my, if I had to sum up my comments in two to not take up too much time, those are the ones. The windows need to be separated, but I think the key principal issue here is that turret design is just disproportionate to the overall design.
Yes, I apologize that I wasn't here for your first presentation at whenever that was earlier, but I fully agree with Alex in that, you know, certainly from the front elevation, you could argue otherwise from the side and the rear, of course, but from the front elevation, these two forms are competing with one another. And if you look at the house across 29th Place over there, the tower is a feature on a house that has, you know, primary, you know, roof lines other than that. You know, the scale of this is dwarfing, you know, at least in the front elevation. Could you go back to the floor plan again so we can see the scale of that in the floor plan view? And so I would additionally say, looking at the floor plan, that, you know, the front face of, you know, what you want to call the tower or turret seems to be in line with the rest of the front elevation, which doesn't make it look like a turret. You know, on other houses that have turrets, again, they're smaller, they're scaled down to be an appendage or feature to complement the rest of the house. And it looks like it's split just about half and half. You know, if I look at the floor plan, you've got half is the front elevation, the other half is the turret, and that's just too big. It's a feature all by itself that is tremendously overscaled. It should be about half the size of what it is to make it appropriate on there. And I also agree with Alex's comments about the pairs of windows that are mulled together. That's not right. I mean, if you don't want to separate them completely, at least put a 4-inch trim board like a casing between them, and that would be more traditional, but certainly better to, you know, actually pull them apart and have individual windows with casing around the whole window. So, and can we go back to the elevations again, Dan? So also looking at the front elevation on the third floor, there's sort of a 2/3 of a window that looks like it's cut off by the roof, you know, on the, you know, there's 3 windows that show up on this. So the one window looks like it would be cut off by the roof, and I can't really tell what's happening there. But
Yeah, that was a result of the front elevation of the main house increasing.
Well, I'm not quite sure what you're proposing to do there. Is it just like, are you going to in what would be the bottom sash elevation, and where there is no sash, what exactly is that there? You know, because it looks like you've got the casing on both sides of the window coming down and it hits the roof wherever it hits it. And, you know, if you need to put a window there, I would, you know, not pretend that it's a double hung window and just put a shorter window with casing around it that doesn't hit the roof. You follow what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I think there's just a huge problem here with the scale of this. It almost looks like particularly with a house right across West 29th Place that has what would be a traditional turret in a proper scale to accompany the building. It looks like a caricature of that, not something that really belongs on this house.
I agree with Alex and Doug. And the one other consideration would be the front porch. I think that ground level approach to the porch and the door is a little bit more suburban. You know, most of the other properties in the neighborhood have at least a couple steps up.
Yes, you're exactly right, Margaret. That front porch is not. I mean, you look at the porch on the existing house next door. It is a raised porch that has a railing around it, and let's see, that one. It's a lower porch, but yeah, go back to one more, I guess. It was the adjacent house. Yes. So you can see there's a traditional porch. I can't tell from there how much it's raised up. Probably only 3 or 4 steps, but it goes along with the one to the west, which are, you know, all in that theme, and to have a grade level porch, I think is not appropriate there. And you did not mention when you discussed the landscape plan, you said that there were, I think, what did you say, boxwood shrubs you were putting around the corner, and that's it? No other plantings? Or the other thing you didn't address was fencing. Or haven't you gotten to that? You know, are you?
Yeah, I apologize for interrupting. There's an existing 4-foot picket fence that will be removed. Portions of that will be removed.
And then replace. So I mean, it'll all come back as the 4-foot picket fence is there now.
Well, it won't be replaced entirely because there's going to be the sidewalk approach to the porch that would come through.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I get that. But are you? I don't see any pictures here that show the large tree that you said you want to take out, and
It's on the lower right hand corner of this slide.
Oh, down here.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit, Dan?
I'm trying.
All right. Well, if not,
Yeah,
that's
I don't know
okay.
that I
I
can.
just don't have a clear recollection. So was that the Block Club agreeing with that, because it looks like it hangs completely over West 29th space into the neighborhood
Yes, and
on the other side.
it's actually impinging on the properties across the street.
I see. All right. Well, is it since this is all one property now, I assume your client bought this and is splitting it off, and is your client going to live in the new home and then sell the existing home, or what are their intentions in that regard?
The client will be living in the new home. As far as disposition of the existing home, I'm not sure what their intent is on that.
Okay, so as of now, there's no plan to provide them with a garage for the existing.
Not under the scope of this project, no.
Okay. Well, I don't know how long he's been gone, but the fellow that did all this was named Fred Stampliner, and he lived there since I think the early '80s, and he built the garage and fenced it all in. And isn't the backyard behind the existing house landscaped pretty well and treated as a outdoor area for the home?
Yes, if you go back to the original site plan, it's a little bit back one previously, I'm sorry. There is some, it's difficult to see in this slide, but there is landscaping back there for the existing residents.
Okay. And I can't read on here, what are the proposed setbacks from on the east and the west side for the new building?
On the east would be 3 feet, and then if you zoom in, if you can, let me pull it up, hold on. 5'4" and 5/8" off the other side.
Okay. So have you run this, taken this for zoning review? Are there any required variances you're going to need to do this?
There will be a couple required variances, correct?
Can you tell us what those are?
Yeah, potentially the setback variances in terms of the house position relative to the property. The other item that was brought up is in terms of the garage. We should not need a variance for that, even though it was initially proposed that we may, just because it really comes down to how far that garage is off of the alleyway that runs where that existing tree is, essentially. We're maintaining the same footprint of the existing garage.
Okay. So you don't have a lot coverage issue?
No, there should not be in terms of proportion, no.
Okay.
This is going to be a full lot split, so this new proposal will become a two-family property. Correct?
It'll be a single family. The residence will be single family with an in-law suite above the garage.
Correct. So from a code standpoint, that's two-family. It's a double occupancy, right?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I firmly agree with my colleagues in terms of all the things that have already been said. And I think I would I don't know what's driving the turret. If that's client driven, I would highly, highly recommend going towards more of a bay configuration if they want the footprint of those spaces that are currently shown in the turret to go with a bay type configuration like the house directly across 29th. I think that would complement the house much more and help correct the proportion issue. I also would encourage the proportion of the kind of gabled portion, maybe increasing the floor plate height of the second floor, as well as maybe increasing the steep pitch of the roof to get that structure to feel taller. I know that there are a lot of cottages on J, but there's also like the ones that you're showing in the immediate context across both streets are a bit more, hold their mass a bit more and their height a lot more, so that they can, if that part of the structure starts to grow a little bit and that perhaps addressing the proportion or the shape overall of the whole tower massing might start to help balance it. And I think that that's part of the reason that the front piece feels the suburban is that the proportions are still not quite right with that either. And I think that that would help adding the height, increasing that height a bit more too. It also feels like the first floor windows and door are not in proportion to each other, and neither are in proportion to the upstairs, or maybe the porch is too high. There's something that's still not coming together for me on that front piece as well. Otherwise, can you clarify where the brick is going to go that's shown?
There is no brick. The brick was eliminated.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing is on the ADU itself. What's the materiality there?
The materiality on that is a hardy plank,
Mm-hmm.
smooth
Okay.
fiber.
Same material.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's great. I
Correct.
would love to see, and I know this might just be an output of the rendering, but really need to see like corner boards, rake boards, window trim around the doors. It feels very like ill-defined at the moment. So it would be great to see that representation there. If it's not planned, I think it needs to be in there. I think it would also be beneficial to the project if you guys have an idea of lighting for the exterior would be really helpful to help kind of give some scale and enliven the facade a bit more. I think that covers it from my end.
Yes, I'll reiterate Antonia's comment about the door. You know, you've got a door that looks like it has a small transom above it, but the whole thing with transom looks like it's still lower than the window head on the first floor. So I think there's some revisions needed there. Another thing you might try with this turret shape is instead of an octagon, maybe try different geometry. Maybe a square or a rectangle. There are lots of examples of that too. And then it wouldn't be like I think something about this octagon makes it feel like you're trying to mimic the house across the street, but not doing a very good job of it. So if you want to have that third floor tower room, maybe consider a different, different geometry for that corner of the house. That might alleviate some of those issues.
If I might add just a couple of comments. I think Nia's comments really summed up a lot of the comments that I had, and I think she had some nice ideas in terms of how to accomplish maybe a slightly different massing, especially with the non-turret portion, to help the full sort of house itself feel more balanced. I just want to say I appreciate the simplification of the materials from the last go around. I think this is a really good step in the right direction there. The only other comment that I have are on the two side elevations. There's some smaller windows that appear to be pushed right up against the sides of the corners of the house, and I think it would probably be beneficial to shift those further inboard so that they feel a bit more balanced and not right at the corners. Mm-hmm. But other than that, my only other comment was just clarification on the materials of the garage which you provided. So appreciate that.
And I
Can I add something? Can I add something, please? Chris?
Yeah, this is Tony Cuccia, the contractor.
Yeah. So are the architects paying attention to the interior floor plan when we're asking to move windows? Because if you look at the historic homes in the neighborhood, and I've worked on several, windows were just placed and they do butt into corners. So historically, windows being stuck against an inside corner or windows stuck at an end, they do match what's in the neighborhood and actually better also because they're more weather proper. With the flashing systems we use today with the cold weather climate flashing, but are we paying attention to the interior floor plan when we're commenting on moving windows because we don't like the placement of them in the exterior? And that's one question there. And as far as the turret, you know, we've done so many revisions and one architect wants this and another architect likes that and another architect doesn't like the height and another architect there. I realize everyone has their opinion, but the homeowner's really getting frustrated because they have done so much to work with us. They love the neighborhood and they're going to build this house. But if there's always these opinions and there's never a settlement on an opinion where it's singular, what is the end game? What is the end design? I hope I'm making sense.
Something that's.
Yeah, can I interject here? I think that this board has been very unified in our opinion about the proportions of this project. We're also tasked with the Secretary of Interior's standards for historic preservation, which for new construction, I mean, we can read it off for you. Does
Read it off. I'm just
specifically cite that it has to be compatible in massing and context to the massing as well as in fenestrations. So it's not necessarily that's our opinion. It's not. Can you please let me speak? It's not our opinion.
That's very opinionated. It's very opinionated.
We are judging against a set of criteria that
To
is
an opinion, your opinion is that judgment.
okay.
I understand it. I've been through these many times in many other communities and in the suburbia where you have to meet certain criteria in Shaker Heights, certain criteria in the city of Hudson. I understand.
Okay, you can take this approach, and if you'd like to have us vote on it, we can do that. So if you'd like to do that, we can do that. Oh, I'm sorry, it's concept. If you want to advance the design and not take into consideration the consistent feedback you've received, you're welcome to do that. We will vote, and you can take it on the landmarks. Because we're not going to sit here and argue, and it feels like you're attacking this board, and we're just trying to do.
No, I feel my
Task with
clients feel
doing.
attacked, and my clients getting frustrated because we had the turret was too tall. Then our pitch was too much on the main house. Now it's not enough. Now the turret's too short.
Dan, do you guys have notes from our previous comments on this?
Chris, can you please give some advice here as the architect?
As Nia has just said, we have been consistent, thorough.
Alex, you weren't on the last meeting.
Sir, could you please let everyone finish responding to your comments instead of
But
just
Alex
trying to
wasn't
talk
on
over
the
everyone?
last review meeting.
Well, Dan, can you please read, or Jessica, can you guys read what our comments were on this if you have the notes from the meeting so that we can, you know, if we're being accused of changing our opinions, can we please review those?
No one's accusing you. Look at your notes. They're
Really what
different.
you said.
Jessica, do you have those handy?
Rick is an historic.
Sir,
Rick
sir,
is an historic.
people are trying to respond to your comments. If you can't take your turn, then I'm going to have to just put you on mute.
Actually, I'd like to ask a question of Chris.
Yeah, give me a second, pulling them up.
Like,
My client is very frustrated, and I apologize. They're very, very frustrated.
I apologize that your clients are frustrated, but there's issues with the project and we have been consistent. And if they would like to have a meeting with the Landmarks Committee to start to understand where we're coming from on this, they're welcome to do that.
That would be great because they want to move this forward quickly.
We would love to allow them to move forward, but the design has to meet the criteria first. And unfortunately, this one still is not meeting that criteria in our opinion.
So can you give us specific changes, not opinions? We want the picture of the turret to
Tony,
be.
I am not your architect. If your clients would like to hire me as a consultant, that would be fantastic. But we've given so much specific feedback that I can't, you know.
But you have it because our architect hasn't performed those changes because he doesn't know what to perform because the feedback is so across the board, so different. There's no specific items to say this should be approved with this
Tony, if
item
I-
A, B, C, and D.
Tony, if I can interject,
Please.
the current iteration we're looking at was taking into account considerations from the previous notes and basically balancing that with the client's wishes in terms of what they want floor plan wise. So it was a balance point between the two.
Which it should be, because they live inside the house. And they look at their own house.
Subsequent comments from today are essentially saying it's not enough.
All right, this is a conversation now of diminishing returns. I'm prepared to make a motion. Chris, I have a question for you. Would you like us to vote on this project up or down, or would you like to table it?
Well, I would like to say one more thing before we try to entertain a motion here, is that, you know, as I said in my initial comments, I apologize that I wasn't here for the first presentation, but it appears that you were responding to roof lines on the turret, and I didn't see what that was, so I can't comment on that. But I think we have today pretty much unanimously agreed that the scale of this turret is inappropriate. If anyone disagrees with me, feel free to chime in after I'm done. And so I think that's a huge design issue here, that this turret is scaled inappropriately. I don't care what the roof pitch is, floor plan wise, and massing wise, it competes, it overpowers the existing house looking at the front elevation. And I think that's a pretty clear comment, and if anyone disagrees with that, please speak up. But I got the impression that we were unanimous on that feeling.
If I can interject, I do have the notes from the Landmarks concept review and the Ohio City concept review. If I can interject those, that's fine.
Please do, Jessica.
Please, go ahead, Jessica.
So the project was seen by the Ohio City Historic District Design Review Committee December 1st. No action was taken because it was conceptual. Comments included the turret is overriding the home and is too substantial, needs to be scaled down. Commented on the brick portion on the front and shallower pitch, and the different roof lines are competing. The Landmarks Commission saw the project on January 26th. And in their concept review, they also commented on the roof pitch lines that were inconsistent between the home and the garage, and the turret pitch as too high and overbearing, and the scale of the turret should be brought down. They did comment on the brick on the front appears to be more suburban, and also, multiple comments on revisiting the roof pitch for the turret and possibly other colors.
All right, so the scale of
interject
the
as the
turret
building,
was
please?
mentioned by everyone there, and you apparently failed to address that in any way.
May I add something, Doug, please? I just heard the roof pitches need to be changed on 2 different meetings. We want the roof pitch of the main home to match the garage. We want the scale of the turret brought down to where it sits, basically bring it down closer to the home so it's more in line with the home. We want to remove the brick on the front elevation in the December 1st meeting. We wanted to remove the suburban-like front facade on the January 26th meeting. We made many of those changes. The pitch of the roof, mentioned twice, is now changed and in line accordingly. The brick is removed.
Tony, you have to realize too that this is the second time that this group is seeing this. So we have not seen it twice already. This is the second time that we've seen it, and you're responding to comments from the Landmarks Commission. You addressed some of the roof pitch comments, but you did not address the one major comment that we had from this committee, which was the size and scale of the turret itself. That has not changed since the last go around. And again, this is the second time that we're seeing this, and that specific comment was not addressed that we had previously. And that's what I think the major comment and major concern that we have for the design of this project to date.
Well, it doesn't say major, it says it's a comment. When you say,
clear,
You can't just pick and choose which comments you're going to respond to.
well, but it's my client's home. I'm not going to make every single concession because they don't want that concession.
If you'd like this to go to a vote,
Then it won't be approved.
I am making a motion. Chris, I have a question for you. Do you want an up or
Yes.
down vote or a tabling it?
Go ahead and put it to a vote.
Okay, I move that we disallow this project for all the reasons that we have consistently, thoroughly, and unanimously told the applicant. And Dan, I would like that very clearly relayed to Landmarks. Do I have a second?
I'll second you.
I second.
and so that reiterate, or so that's all of the comments that were made in this meeting and previous meeting. Okay. Thank you.
Dan, please call the roll.
All right, Mr. Frondorf,
Yes.
Lan,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Ms. Marinucci,
Yes.
Mr. Talley,
Yes.
and Mr. Wall.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Chair, the motion passes. Staff will follow up with the applicant as far as next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I add something, please? Can the same people be on the next call next time so we don't have different feedback?
Sir, it's a committee that meets on a regular basis.
But not everyone's here all the time.
The committee members make it when they can. Usually we have most committee members there, but there are occasions that not everybody can attend.
I understand, but then there's different opinions brought in at different times, which then extends the
It's
timeline of the
one-
project.
It's
then my
one
clients-
committee.
Can we
And
move
they've-
forward, or can we?
Yeah, we can move forward to the next case.
Let's-
Thank
I
you. sir.
apologize, but I'm getting a lot of heat from my client. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Dan, please call the next item.
All right. So next one is, I'm trying to figure out how to. Next one is case, Landmarks case 23-003, Ohio City case OC 2203, 4303 Clinton Avenue. This is referred back from the Landmarks Commission. It's Clinton Townhomes. We have Ryan Grass and the owner, Andrew Klinicki, or Kalnitsky. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Here to present. So Ryan, Andrew, when you guys are ready, please feel free and let me know when you want me to change screens.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
Dan, as I mentioned earlier, could you share with us what the Landmarks Commission comments were, so we have a better understanding of what they said?
Yeah, Jessica, did you have a chance to pull those up?
So the project was seen by Landmarks last week on the 9th, last week. And so they had similar comments to what the local design review had. They did like the homes along Clinton. They did appreciate those, but had issues with the site plan and the townhomes in the back. And so suggested the applicant work on concerns of the site and to create a modified or reworked townhome that fits and is more appropriate with the density in the area, which they are for the density, but would like to see that reworked plan. And so recommended in their tabling to bring it back through the local design review before returning with an adjustment.
They didn't have any more specific comments. That's pretty generic about the site plan and the back units. I mean, when they talked about density, that was it, huh?
Yeah, so they did share similar concerns with the amount of townhomes in the back, and so suggested reworking those.
So I think one of the objections that was voiced here clearly was, the scale of those buildings, 4 units shoved back there in the alley. Was that sort of the drift of their remarks as well?
Yes, and so this is just a review. I don't believe motion would need to be made on that. I don't know if Dan, if you would need to confirm that, because it was tabled at Landmarks, and so it doesn't need to have that motion again.
All right, well, I just want to see if, you know, how clear they were in concurring with what our decision was. All right, sorry for the
Yes.
interruption. You can continue your presentation.
Sure.
Ryan, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Doug, if I could add to the comments already, I'll suggest to you from my perspective in the immediate landmarks, they essentially reiterated the concerns that this body had. You know, there were just generally, I think they like the design. They think they like because they've seen it a couple times. They like the direction it's gone. They have, at the risk of being overly generous, they didn't really have any objections to the single family homes on Clinton Avenue. But their primary concern was the number and size, the number of townhouse units at the rear, their appropriateness for the neighborhood, their height and proximity to the adjacent properties. So it's from Andrew and I from these meetings, the message received, if I can simplify what I think was everybody's perspective. So what we've done is work together, Andrew and I, to take all these things to heart. We pulled back on the quantity of units, and frankly decided through our discussions that instead of the 4 townhouses, we think it would be a charming development if we maintain the 3 single-family homes and 2 car garages on Clinton Avenue. We essentially remove the townhouses and included in their place 2 smaller single-family homes. So that's what you're going to see today. And if you had the chance to review the material, that's what you've probably already seen. So to simplify, from kind of the middle of the property, the auto court to the north, it's unchanged. Nothing's been, all the feedback and conversations and design work that we've done, we thought was received well enough that we didn't really need to work on that area. But the single family homes, we really dug in. And you'll be happy to know that we added a really large turret to every one of them. I apologize if one of those people are still on the call. But so the front end of this presentation is the same. If you can go one more slide forward, please. We took some inspiration from some of these, the bottom 3 images on the back. Those, especially kind of the bottom center image, that's a single family home that's positioned in Vine Street now. So we're proposing 2 single family homes with attached 2 car garages. And because of the reduction in, and because of the reduction in the quantity and size and volume of those structures, now that we're able to afford some yards with those single family homes, kind of green up that auto court a little bit, make that a little more pleasant. And then what we did do, and this was a lot of conversation we had with between Andrew and I, and also with zoning, in that we faced the houses north. So the front entrance faces Clinton Avenue, faces a pedestrian kind of walkable sidewalk that approaches from Clinton Avenue. So for example, if you're the visitor, you'd be directed to park on Clinton, come down the sidewalk, and you actually be greeted by the front of the houses. And also visually, as you walk down or as you pass by between the 2 houses that are in the front on Clinton, you'll see the front of the house, and I think it just seems more inviting. And in doing that, we've got the garages for those single-family homes facing Vine Court, which I think is consistent design-wise relative to the rest of Vine. Now, I do have to admit that it was just Monday morning we got some feedback from zoning, did an in-depth zoning evaluation of this, and there's a mild discrepancy between this site plan and what we would respectfully like to build. Is, if you can imagine those 2 single-family homes at the back, they're pushed forward 3.5 feet. In doing that, we've complied with the rear yard setback. Other than that, everything you're going to see is accurate as to what we've proposed. So if you can move forward, I think we've got some imagery of the, okay, here we go. So the upper left and the bottom, unchanged other than what you can see between the homes, and you can start to see the front of that single family home. We're thrilled about the fact that they are kind of let's call them right-sized, if you will. And you can start to see their proportions relative to the front of the house or the homes at the front of the property. And on the upper right corner, you can start to see what the look of those are. It's a kind of an L-shaped home, a single gable inside of another gable as it faces forward. And you can start to see those front yards with the little fencing around those. And the fencing will match all the rest of the property that we've brought to before. And I think there's another slide that shows you some additional imagery. Okay, so the image on the top is actually what you will see once you've gotten past the single family homes around Clinton Avenue. You're essentially standing on that pedestrian sidewalk that approaches the rear of the property. And you can start to see double hung windows, small front porch, the fencing for the front yard, a little smattering of landscaping, and kind of the roof profiles that we're proposing in some colors. Again, so we're just using a dark blue and a white trim. And I think that's the only new slide. The balance of the presentation may be, yeah. Oh, we did update the site section, so you can start to see the difference in scale from the townhouses to the single family homes that we're now proposing. The previous line was to the peak of the townhouses, and you can see now that the difference of what's proposed and what was originally suggested has now been modified. So that's where we're at. Appreciate your feedback, suggestions, thoughts.
I have two areas of feedback. The first is the site plan, and then the second are the designs themselves. As I've said consistently for months now, I still think that this is too much. I know that you've reduced the total units here on the site plan by 2. And it's not the number of units, but it's the way they are positioned on the lot. I think the use of an auto port in a historic district is inappropriate, especially whereas here you have both street and alley access. And I think it's inappropriate in a 2-family zoned district. This site plan will also require a substantial lot split, which I think will need to go through city planning, but it'll have to meet the muster of 309.26. Importantly for this project is Ohio City Inc. also has a policy on lot splits, and it prohibits lot splits that take a historically whole lot, as we have 2 of here, and then severs the access from the primary street from Clinton from the alley access here behind Court. And so, again, my objections to the site plan remain. I think it's too much. Not too many units. I've always said that you could put garages on the back. You could build ADUs above it. In the slide, I believe 2 slides back, you said the center image. One more. Keep going, sorry. It was the historic photos. Yeah, right there. The middle bottom one there. That building was moved when Max Hayes was built. And if I'm looking and thinking that that's the right, yeah, it is. That house now on the first floor is a garage, and it's a carriage house above, and it's a whole lot that belongs to the house that faces Clinton. And so there's been no lot split there. It is the carriage house for the primary house on Clinton. Dan, if we could go back down to the elevations. So for those reasons, and to not create a bad precedent where we are splitting up our historically whole lots and turning backyards into development sites and creating auto car ports in the middle, my objections still stand. With regard to the redesigned 2 single-family homes in the rear, my comments primarily focus on the materiality of them. You showed vinyl siding, vinyl white windows, and vinyl trim on both the homes and the garages. That's wholly unacceptable and inappropriate in a historic district, and I could not support this for that reason alone. The fiberglass doors I also think are inappropriate, and the 5-foot fence shown on the plan eliminates the community aspect of having their front porches. Now I understand you put that there because no one wants to sit on their front porch and look at the back of someone's garage, but they are still a front porch and they have a 5-foot fence around it. obliterates the objectives of the community of trying to foster community through porches and through interacting with someone. You can't very well do that when the house is in the rear of the lot and surrounded by a 5-foot fence. So in summation, those are my two primary objections: the site plan, and then the materialities that you've selected for the rear houses. But I think that the dispositive factor for me is the site plan. We also do not have elevations of what it would look like facing Vine Court. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if we missed it, but it doesn't look like you have rear elevations from Vine Court. Are those, do you have those? No, I guess
Ryan,
not.
you're muted.
And I think you're muted if you're trying to respond.
Is that better? I don't see elevations from Vine Court of these two rear units. Is that not here? The rear
Yeah,
elevation of
Doug, that's an oversight from my office. We've developed the model holistically. It has been designed, but in putting this together, the presentation itself together quickly, it was oversight in not including those. We have the imagery, but it wasn't included in this presentation. You can actually see the spot where it was supposed to be on this page. And Alex, I always appreciate your opinion and your commitment to some of the criteria that's part of this historic neighborhood. So we'll just agree to disagree on some of those points, but just a tiny clarification. We did in the presentation note that the fences are 5 foot high on the front units, because as pedestrians are walking between those to get to the rear houses, we thought a little bit of privacy was appropriate, but we've reduced that at the back to 4 feet. I think that's noted on the last sheet, because we understand we're not trying to block people's views and their interaction with everyone, but I think we noted that the Vine Street homes have a 4-foot fence. And finally, if the vinyl materials are the deal breaker, of course, we went through this in the last iteration. And I've talked to Andrew. Fiber cement matching materials on the front buildings to the rear buildings is perfectly reasonable for us. We'll do the aluminum clad windows, the fiber cement siding, and trim. We're not opposed to quality materials on the buildings.
good. That was going to be one of my remarks as well. Did you think about, I mean, all three houses on the front have different color schemes. Do you think about making the back two different instead of, mimicking one another?
We did, and we actually did change the color of the two of them, and it really started to turn into quite a palette, if you will. It started to look a little busy. We tried to calm that down by matching all the colors on the garage to a kind of a neutral gray. But for now, we thought matching colors were reasonable for the back ones.
I again, I think I said this first time. I actually really like the design in the back. I do think there are some, lots in the area for buildings that have, large swaths of concrete. I was going to suggest, if I don't know if there's any opportunity to do any kind of like permeable paving or anything with the, concrete or anything in back. That would be nice. I was going to echo the materials. I think you already have that under control. I like the size being reduced. The height of those townhomes, I think, were kind of intense. And I do think it's a nice experience in the back. I like that they have yards and, kind of their own sort of space. So I think it works well for me.
I will.
I think,
Oh, sorry, Chris, you can go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead, Dia.
All right. I really do appreciate you guys revisiting the site plan. I am close. I'm close to being on board with this. I wanted to know if you guys, I do echo, I would love to see, hardy board, see the material treated the same throughout in terms of quality. And I still wanted to reiterate my, or not reiterate, but just remind, I don't know if this included the comments I had made on the porch pieces, like using the actual tongue and groove instead of the decking material, because I think it really does like just really stand out in the neighborhood when that is missed. So that holds true for me still. In terms of the overall site, Dan, can you go to the site plan, please? I feel I really want to get on board with this for you guys. Is there any possibility, consideration, that there's some reconfiguring gently here, a little bit of push and pulling, maybe on the footprint of the single family, the front units, so that, and then maybe a little bit of pushing those rear units up a little bit closer to Clinton so that we can start to have a little bit more engagement. Like maybe there's a little bit more space between the front ones. You're getting so close, in my opinion. And then there's that one rendering where you kind of see the glimpses. It's very close for me. If there could be a little bit more, I don't know. Is it possible? What do you guys think? I mean, are you willing to potentially just look at it from a footprint standpoint? I think aesthetically, I could be on board with kind of what Philip said, and that there's a good. We're starting to get to that really nice community neighborhood kind of feel of this whole unit, the whole project. I really want like a little bit more push and pull to just get those back units a little bit more of a face onto Clinton if possible.
Yeah. If I can reiterate, so I understand you clearly. I think you're suggesting, if I understand correctly, is maybe push and pull the 3 front units a little bit, so potentially they're a little narrower. Shove the 2. I'm just going to make up numbers. Let's say I got these 2 foot thinner, or 2.5 foot thinner. Keep the one on the far right where it's at, but we'll have an extra couple feet. Put the one in the middle, move it a little bit to the right, so that entrance has a little more significance in its size and proportion. So the view to the back is greater and clearer. So so they don't feel as. I'm just going to stop there. Is that
Yeah,
about
no,
what you're saying? Okay.
Yes, and it would be great. I don't know if we can. I go back and forth. The single family ones in the front. I appreciate that little bit of yard, but do those garages then engage, and then the whole unit can shift up, and the back units end up getting even more yard space to help increase the value of those units, both from an physical, like a literal value, but also like an equitable value. Maybe that's something, but what you described is exactly what I'm thinking. And maybe if we could reorient just the front face of those buildings so that those front doors line up with the gaps between the houses, like instead of kind of offsetting, and or are a little bit closer, like, if those 2 front little entrances can mirror so they're closer to each other and also in alignment. I feel like those would be really, really nice subtle changes if you're open to it to help get it there.
Just an idea. How about the single family home 3? Take that garage and shift it, to the right, so it kind of opens up the view for home family 5 to Clinton. See how it's in the way, sort of.
Yeah, I think it would still benefit if they could be narrowed even just by 2 feet. And I don't mean like narrow it and then make the footprint smaller. I mean like make them deeper, too, or push them forward a little bit so you get that depth. It's more just a little bit of the play of the proportions in plan. I'm good with what you were showing proportionately in terms of the aesthetics, with those material considerations that we've already brought up, but it's just a little bit of the tweaking of this plan, and I feel like I can get on board with it if you're open to that.
Yes. The short answer is yeah, absolutely. I think if we can, perfectly capable of shifting those garages, let's call them single family home 1 and single family home 3. If we shift those garages to the side and the outer edges, if you will, and then we can shrink the width of the single family homes a bit so we can get the space between them a little more generous. Perfectly reasonable solution. Yeah, investigation, if you will. The door, I'll try, the doors on the back. Can we investigate it? Absolutely. Do I have the solution right now? No. Because
Okay, that's fair.
without getting into the weeds, those doors, because of the plan, the door lines up with that side of the building is kind of the least,
Yeah, your core side, I
they're
see.
more functional. Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
So
I
so
see
the
that.
opportunity for windows are a little less there. So I'd hate to put that on the drive side and eliminate
Yeah.
some windows.
Maybe it's an opportunity. No, you have the living rooms in the front. Yeah, maybe it's a window engage. Maybe it's a really tall, nice window. So when you're looking through, it's very clearly, it holds its weight as a single family home, even though it's further back. I would be fine with that. Also, Ryan, I really appreciate you're very good natured and I really appreciate your response to our opinions. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I think I really appreciate the thought that went into this. I think the single family homes in the rear are really attractive. I think they're scaled appropriately for where they're located. I think however, my concern, I share Alex's concern with the lot split, and Alex mentioned something about OCI standards for allowable lot splits, and also mentioned zoning as well. So I don't know if there's been any commentary from OCI relative to the proposed lot splits, sort of front to back, as well as dividing the two parcels into three along the front. But my big sticking point is the precedent that it sets with contiguous historic lots along Clinton and subdividing those front to back. I really like the designs of the single family homes and the feel that while it's still an auto court, you're providing some really nice space for those homes. But my hang up is the lot split and the precedent that it sets.
I also really appreciate so many of these changes. In thinking about this conversation about the lot split, in my role at the Restoration Society in our Heritage Home Program, I have worked with a number of homeowners who either own both the front and back house historically, on historic properties that have these front and back houses, or working with homeowners who are trying to split lots for good modern day reasons that involve like getting loans through the bank to do the renovation and other things that are very complicated for homeowners that have the shared lots. And so looking at it for me from this modern day perspective, I feel that the design adheres to the historic nature of the neighborhood where you have the front and back house, but that allowing for some of the modern day issues that come along with a shared lot, that this would avoid some of those issues that we've seen. And so for my vote, I would say if the materiality is changed to what we discussed, the porch materials and the back homes being consistent with the front, I would be on board with this design. And I would also say to my committee members, we have to remember that everything would come before us and it's all a unique decision. So if this goes forward with the lot split and then we're presented with something else, it's a new decision every time.
Thank you, Margaret. And Chris, if I could just address the lot split issue from a neighborhood resident perspective. I think they'll experience front homes and rear homes that, if I could suggest, aren't shockingly different from ADUs over garages at the back of a lot. I don't think the perceived, I know I draw a big red line on the site plan. I don't think anybody ever sees that where the properties are split. So I think experientially, it's I think it'll feel reasonable and appropriate, if you will.
Yes, I agree with Margaret here that I think it may not represent the body of traditional rear house division, but this is now is not the 19th century anymore. This is the 21st century, and I think there has to be some consideration given to let's say that the houses in the back were not split up from the houses of the front. It makes legal and financial problems in this day and age that I think are worth making some exceptions for. And as Alex has said in the past, that the more we allow this, the more it will happen. But density is going to increase in this neighborhood over years and decades. And the way those houses, came about in the first place were often financial considerations, like financial downturns. People built these houses in the back to collect rent or something, or build a house in the back of their lot on the alley, so they could stay in the front house. They were selling off what they could sell off in difficult financial times. And with the housing market the way it is in this neighborhood, I think we're going to continue to see those difficulties. And if we were to maintain this, original lot configuration and try to press that, I think we would make this neighborhood unaffordable, except for wealthy people. And so I personally think that we can make some of these exceptions, and we have to be careful as we go along. So I think it's a big step here, going from 4 units to 2 in the back from the developer's point of view. Say, geez, I lost 2 units here, but I think we can still make this work. So I appreciate what you guys have gone through to get to this point. And and again, I support Margaret's idea. We can make that walkway from Clinton going back. We can make some just minor adjustments to the front 3 houses to make that a little more inviting and a natural approach to get to the front doors of the rear houses. I could fully support that, I think.
Damn.
All right. Are there any other comments? We're not going to be taking a vote on this since it was tabled by the Landmarks Commission. So it's just kind of for courtesy feedback. So if there are no other comments, I guess, Andrew, Ryan, do you guys feel like you got enough feedback?
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
so as a matter of course, I understand you're not going to vote because if we go back to landmarks, but is there still kind of a little synopsis of the discussions that's forwarded to them? Or are you going to trust me to translate that?
I mean, we'll summarize the comments and we'll
great.
share those with the commission members. If it's helpful for you, we can, later today or tomorrow, we can get together and kind of go over that summary so you have a clear understanding of, we're on the same page basically.
And I'm not trying to add work to you. If it's easier, I'm perfectly happy just kind of listing a bunch of bullet points and then sending that to you. If you want to just confirm or disagree with those, it's up to you.
That's fine by me.
All right. I just feel like we've thankfully turned a little bit of a corner, and your thoughts and ideas, I'd like to at least show that the landmarks, that we've turned that corner a little, even if it's not a full corner.
And Ryan, just to clarify, you are agreeing to removing all the vinyl on the project, including on the garages?
Yeah, and frankly, I remember from our last meeting, Alex, there was a couple things that I'm going to write in there. You know, there was the on the red house, the little third story window, I think was a weird proportion. The changes in the porches to tongue and groove, and I still have notes from those meetings, and they may be recorded in the ones from our previous. The things we've already agreed to in the last one and what we've discussed today is our intention is how we move forward to landmarks.
And then one final thing on the porches, I know tongue and groove, but also I just noticed, I don't know, I didn't pick up on this earlier, but it says concrete foundation brick is for the ones facing Clinton.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Like a brick pattern concrete.
Yeah, could you just keep it all like a composite material or do it like a lattice there or something instead of a poured concrete?
Oh, on the porches.
That face wall, it says concrete. Maybe I'm misreading this.
Yeah, that's the. I'm sorry, that's not for the porch. That's for the home itself.
Yeah, never mind.
No worries. Okay.
Unless there's anything else, I thank you guys, and we'll see you soon at Landmarks. We'll touch base later today, Ryan. Then we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Great. All right. Thanks. I'm gonna miss you guys.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
All right. Next up, we have several concepts for comment today. First one up is case number OC 23-13, St. Ignatius High School, 1911 West 30th Street. We've got Patrick Highland here to share with us the plan for demolition and some new construction. So Patrick, when you're ready, go for it and let me know when you want me to change slides.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to have Richard Klingshirn of St. Ignatius kind of give a little intro about the project before we get into design.
Great, thank you all. Thank you for the time, appreciate it. It's good to be back in front of this group. It's been a few years. So we are proposing an addition for our academic facilities, which would entail demolishing our existing Carroll Gym, an abandoned smokestack, and a garage building, and then building a 3-story academic wing in place of essentially where those are currently located. So we are not expanding our footprint of our campus at all, simply replacing those buildings with academic facilities. It would also, that facility would connect to our existing library on the south end and our existing classroom building on the north end. Patrick will go through all these details. This addition is really driven from our strategic planning process. It is not intended to, nor do we expect to, increase enrollment of the school. This is not going to have any impact on parking. We're not adding any parking, any of that. It's just building academic facilities that allow us to realize our strategic plan in terms of what it's like to teach high school today. There is you'll see an addition to the building that has permanent bleachers, which replaces our current, basically temporary aluminum bleachers, and allow us to have a more, frankly, a more friendly face to the city of Cleveland versus the city looking at the back of our campus, which is what you see today. I'm happy to say that we have socialized and reviewed our concepts with the Bridge Carroll J Block Club, which is basically the block club on the side of the street, on the side of Lorraine that this applies to. But we've also socialized with the South of Lorraine Block Club because they're a part of our campus too. And we were pleased to present at the Ohio City Community Meeting not quite a month ago. We received very favorable comments and feedback from all 3 of those groups. And to my knowledge, we've not had any objection from any of those participants, those groups. So we're excited about this. We've got a lead time. This is, we've got a ways to go here, but we're well along in the planning process. So we're pleased to present basically our schematic design slash concept today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to step you through the details.
Again, hi, I'm Pat Highland. I'm an architect, senior architect with Perspectus. Perspectus is serving as architect of record for this project. We're working with Fielding International out of Detroit. They are the lead design architect on the project. So next. So the project is going to be located, and we'll zoom in here on the aerials, but on the St. Ignatius campus, on the west side of Wasmer Field, as shown there in the yellow box. Next. Just a little closer in. Again, we are tucked in behind Murphy Gym and between the main building and Wasmer Field. A really broad outline of the addition is shown in the yellow box. Next. But just three-dimensional to just walk you around the site to understand things. If we start with Carroll Gym on, let's say, call it the northeast. Carroll Gym is a 1920s building that feels like a 1920s building. Smells like one too. The power plant was built in the 40s. Basically, this supplies a lot of central plant services and utilities for the rest of the complex. Murphy Gym was built in the 90s. That's an auxiliary gym. Sullivan Gym is the historic gym. That's a major varsity competition gym built in the 50s. The library was built in the 1980s. And then the main building, what we call the main building, is the 1890s. I won't say the original St. Ignatius building, but very close to the beginning of the founding of the school. Next. So what we are proposing being demolished is Carroll Gym and the power plant, or the central plant building, as you see within the yellow boxes. Next. Oops, skip one. Again, well, the library will be renovated. Oh, okay, stop. The library there, that will be renovated. We are installing in the basement of that library the central plant because we need to build a new central plant to make this project work. And then if you guys can go back one, you can see the general approximation of the footprint of the addition. Next. Again, just to give you a little closer view of what is being demolished, this is Carroll Gym. Again, it's a clear story, 1920s gymnasium, which has been accreted onto over the years with a press box and various garages. Next. This is the view if I'm looking from east to west. You can see the original Carroll Gym. You can see that little press box and then those garage doors that were added over the years just to provide space. So it's very utilitarian on this side. Next. This is the north side facing what we call the Marion parking lot. Next. And then you get a sense of the nature of the building on, let's say, we'll call it within the quad space. Next. The power plant, again, built post-war 1940s. It is a two-story block building with a smokestack, put it simply. Again, you get a sense of what it looks like from the interior of the courtyard. Again, pretty utilitarian, serving as right now as a service building, but also for some significant central plant utilities for this side of campus. Next. And this is the view of the power plant, again, across Wasmer Field, looking east to west. And you see the existing bleachers that are kind of tucked in there on the field. Next. One last view, this is the south facade of the power plant. Next. So what we're not tearing down, of course, is the main building, again, built in the 1890s, very German Gothic structure. Right now, the building primarily hosts administrative, but a lot of classroom spaces throughout. Next. These are the views that these are the within the quad space, just to give you a sense of the ornament and the beautiful masonry work in the articulation and fenestration of the building. I'll just point out things like the dormers and the tower behind are important elements to St. Ignatius. Also a rusticated base, and then a field basically of red brick. Next. The library facade, that's the shorter building there, 2 stories. That was built in the 1980s. Again, just to show you, we're not planning to, that elevation there, we're not touching, besides maybe putting in some louvers for some mechanical. Next. So this facade of the library, called the east facade, this is where our addition will be engaging fully with that entire length of that building mass. Just to let you know. Thanks. Next. So general gross site plan, again, I try to delineate where the addition is going. You can see how we're engaging with the library swooping around to the north. Then we are connecting back to the main building via a glass umbilical to allow us, it's a bridge that'll go over that area to maintain access to the quad. And you see, I've noted the main building, the library, Sullivan, and Murphy, just to orient everybody. Next. I know these are not necessarily hard to read, so I'll summarize what's going on in each floor plan. So everything with the red box is the addition. Everything the color of the other is renovations that are planned for the existing buildings. But in general, if I talk about the addition will have if we go from plan south, a common space for the students. The orange space is a large group instruction area that's flexible for multiple uses. There'll be a new varsity locker room. Again, St. Ignatius is not planning on playing varsity football games here, but it'll be a larger locker room. A new in green and teal there, the athletic spaces for trainers and such, and then some storage for the field. And then back in the main building, we are renovating the existing library primarily for variety of tutoring and counseling services for the students. Next. Second level addition is primarily all classroom spaces, so everything in yellow are teaching spaces. So I'll call them more the liberal arts spaces will be used there. And you see the gray corridors are providing, they're larger, give more prominent socializing spaces, a lot of soft space through the building. In this plan, you do see how we are building new bleachers, permanent bleachers into the mass of the building. Next. Third floor of the addition is primarily art spaces. So we'll have drawing studios, painting studios, ceramic studios, various baking studios, and also some general classrooms on that space. There are also that little mustard colored bump out on the east facade. There, that will be a press box for the field, so St. Ignatius students can broadcast games and filming can go on from that location. Next. Then lastly, we have a mezzanine space. There'll be it's an arts mezzanine. These will be built for AP art students so they can have their own studio space. And this area will be primarily within a tower element on the building. Next. So I think the renderings tell a better story than the elevations, but so on the top, you're looking at the north elevation. So looking from the Marion parking lot to the south, you can see we are developing a tower element. We're not trying to rival the existing iconic St. Ignatius Tower, but the school does want to have, let's say, a little brother or cousin tower with the building. You can see the glass umbilical bridge connecting the addition to the main building. On the lower elevation, that is the east elevation. So when Richard talks about presenting a much friendlier and more prominent face to the city, this is what we're envisioning. Again, a tower element to the north, the press box element in the middle with the gable, and then on the south side, you can see the glass doors that will go to the common space, and they'll provide direct access to the field. Just to give you a sense of kind of how we're massing it out in elevation. Also, that we are adding dormers. I want to say we're not trying to, we're taking our cues from the main building, but not mimicking them directly. Next. Just some quick sections. Again, the addition is 3 stories and a mezzanine. On the bottom, you can see on the bottom section, there is no basement, to get a sense of the space. Next. For the elevations, I will say just you'll see the elevations and the renderings have different tower elements. We are working through that. It's just the design issue we've been tackling, but you can get a sense of the massing and the articulation of the addition across. This will be looking east to west. We have a more, let's say, more modern element with the AMDG signage on it. The gable in the middle of the press box, a little massing in the tower to the north. We're grounding the building. You can see the front of the stands with an element with there, and then you see that darker area where a tunnel comes from the locker room onto the field. Next. Again, just a different view as you start, just a different angle. Again, we're still working on the tower and the fenestration, but we're trying to be sensitive, take our cues from the main, but not realize we cannot. It's very hard to rebuild the intensity of the masonry from the 1890s. Again, the material palette, I showed it later in the presentation, but it's red brick to match the main building. We'll have cast stone elements at sills and bands as they kind of wrap around the building. Then we're looking at Ariscraft, a cast masonry product, to ground the base of the building in a rusticated manner. We also have a lighter buff brick that we are looking at for elements as well. Next. Again, just another view. You can see the AMDG. That below there is where the student commons is. You can see how the bleachers are integrated into the mass, and then we will have a viewing platform across where it says St. Ignatius High School in blue. That is just another area where VIP events can occur, but also it provides coverage over the entry. Next. The interior of the courtyard, so I'm looking generally, let's say, southwest to northeast. You can see the glass and metal umbilical bridge that's connecting the main building to the addition. The idea here is eventually this courtyard, or quad, which is, let's say, it's not used to its best ability currently. It'll become another outdoor classroom spaces or just outdoor gathering spaces, social spaces for the students with various penetrations under that porch element. So students, Ignatius let students in and out of buildings, so to do something nice in the quad is the goal of the project. Next. Again, for the Marion Mall, looking to the north. Again, that third story, it's a double height space with a mezzanine, and you can understand if we're trying to get as much natural light into the painting and the drawing studios as much as we can. Next. Again, I just sampling of our material palette that we are gathering. Again, the red brick and a buff brick. That buff brick comes out a little brown there. It's a little lighter than that. Next. When I talk about Ariscraft Profit, it's the unit's deeper than this. It's just a sample that I have, again, trying to take reference from the rusticated base of the main building. Next. Miscellaneous metals, so gutters, downspouts, windows, curtain walls. Again, we'll take our cues from the main building, which is a darker bronzy or brownish color. We haven't picked them out specifically yet, but these are the samples we are looking at. Next. For the tower elements and some of the highlights on the tower, we cannot afford copper, but we're looking for metals that can emulate copper but still be durable and last. So again, here's a sample, different samples we're looking at for those different elements on the tower, but probably also try to integrate a little bit of this into the dormers on the roof. And lastly, shingles. Again, we'd love to use all new slate roof to match the main, but costs are driving us elsewhere. So the best, we're doing a heavy duty shingle that could best mimic slate and the shadow lines as best we can. So on the mansard roofs, that's what we'll call the field asphalt, will be something in this hue. Next. And then if you notice, if you're driving down Lorraine, you look up at the existing tower, stagnaceous, there's a beautiful pattern put into the tile, the slate tile roof. We look to use different color asphalt shingles to mimic or exert a little bit of a pattern onto the little brother tower that we are developing. And I think that's it.
Yeah, that's all the slides we have. So, yeah, I guess comments?
Well, I think overall you're doing a nice job of pulling this together. Couple of things that jump out to me are the connector from the main building. I understand wanting to make it glass and everything, and it's a third element from it's a connector. It's not part of either building, so let's make it transparent. But why did you push it to the south side instead of? It looked to me like you could have aligned it with the existing corridor of the main building to go kind of straight across instead of creating that dog leg there in transition. So I would like you to address that. The third material back here on the AMDG little corner doesn't seem to be necessary to me. I mean, I don't know why it draws a lot of attention to that corner by introducing another material. So I'm not sure what that brings to the party here, as far as I'm concerned. And the last thing is the mansard roof / tower over the corner. To me, needs a lot of work. The mansard roof just doesn't look like it belongs with the rest of this to me. I could see not doing it at all, but it looks like there's a little copper doghouse sitting on top of this other mansard roof, and it just doesn't look right. I mean, if you looked at Italianate homes in the neighborhood, there are some that had mansard roofs, and sometimes they have a widow's walk cupola or something up there with an iron railing around it, but not a tower. I think you've got kind of too many things going on there that could be resolved, and I just think that's an unnecessary gesture for this, or at least the way it's currently masked and proportioned. So I guess other than that, I reiterate that I like a lot about this, the way you scaled it and proportioned it and so forth.
Well, if I just, the three elements, so we did look at putting the glass bridge at the center line, but the way the addition was shaking out, as well as some concerns we had at that location, we don't have to infill any, because of fire, some code issues, we would have to, if we put the center, we'd have to do some significant other work on the building. And the way the programming worked out, it made sense to come in at that location. So that's just the answer to that one. Two, we will look at the materials. It's kind of, right now, the cost is also playing into this, how much, whether we have buff brick versus how much rustication we have. And then lastly, we agree wholeheartedly on the tower. This is something that's been haunting my dreams for the past few weeks. So we're trying to bring some form that I agree it is it's stubby right now. But I think the school would really like some, again, keep on the little brother element to this side. So we're keeping working on that.
Well, maybe consider that there are other ways to draw attention to that as an important, corner of the campus. Tower maybe isn't the only answer there, because that really bothers me.
Okay.
Hey, Pat.
Hello.
Good to see you. So a couple of my comments. So I think this is overall it's shaping up to be a really handsome addition to this part of the campus. I think it fits well architecturally into the campus. I appreciate pulling in some of the different details and materiality and some of the other sort of key nuances of other parts of the historic buildings. I like the idea of how you're starting to treat the roof of the tower itself, creating that patterning with the asphalt shingles. I think it feels like it's really well incorporated. Generally, I think it's feeling like it's becoming really well incorporated into the campus. I agree that there's some additional consideration for that tower component. I don't mind it being a tower component. I think you have the main historic tower sort of on that part of campus. You have sort of a mini sort of tower cupola at the chapel. I think this does complement that theme, that idea of these different elements sort of marching around the campus. But to your point, I think it still needs a little bit of finessing. I want to echo Doug's comment about the materiality of the AMDG portion. It feels a little maybe too foreign to the overall composition, and I don't know if that's because of the coloration, the materiality of that piece now, or if it in a way kind of feels like if you go up to maybe the first rendering, Dan. I don't know if it feels like if it's competing with sort of the blank facade of the bleacher portion. It just feels, this maybe just take a look at the materiality of that in regards to the composition of the whole. But I mean, other than that, I think it's a nice sort of addition to this portion of the campus.
Doug and Chris, are you saying you guys prefer the AMDG to be more red than white? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it jumps off, this little corner jumps off the page at me. Say, why the hell is that so different than the rest of the building? With no apparent answer. Why?
Okay, I just wanted to I just want to understand what you guys were channeling there.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's that, or if it's in combination with sort of the buff face of the bleacher portion. I mean, if the AMDG had a reason to be different, I think it's competing in coloration or in juxtaposition to that blank facade of the bleacher. So I don't know if the bleacher maybe becomes brick, and then that this AMDG portion stands alone as some important element, or vice versa, if the AMDG portion wants to maybe be more red in color, so that it fits with the composition of everything else that's sort of within that datum.
Yeah, and another way to address it or try to integrate it into the rest of the building, if you want to have that lighter tone to some of the building, maybe introduce some brick banding or something that extends through it and breaks it down instead of just the big massive buff.
Okay, I don't disagree.
I just wanted to add, I kind of echo everything that's been said. Kind of different view on the AMDG, and I at first I look forward to kind of seeing it on slightly clearer elevations, because it looks like, I don't know if that's, you have some a reveal at, I don't know if it's the floor line or if that's just a sill or if it lines up across the face of the brick portion. Um, yeah, that I'm not sure what that's in line with, and I couldn't really read it on the elevations, or if those windows just go down to the floor
Now
or sit on.
that's the sill height, and again, I think we, just because there is horizontal banding on the main building, we wanted to pick up those lines, whether it's material or
Okay.
articulation.
Yeah.
But I agree, we're detailing those right now, so, yeah, so we're trying to figure out to pull the lines all the way across.
Gotcha. Yeah, I tend to, I don't actually mind the color of the white box on the corner. I would, I tend to be not one to make everything kind of homogeneous. And I think it stands out. Maybe it wants to be even more prominent, or take up more space, go down to the ground. I see that brick, the brick and the, what you call it, the pier column supporting it. Maybe it can, that part seems a little bit awkward to me. Um, but I actually don't mind it being something completely different on the corner, just if it's going to differentiate, if it's going to be a thing that stands out, then it needs to really stand out. It needs to either be bigger, prominent, maybe it doesn't, maybe it just intersects with the windows, that's fine. Maybe it sticks out, like protrudes a little bit from that facade a little bit more. Um, yeah, I don't mind it. I also really appreciate the amount of natural light that you're trying to bring into the space. I love the tower on the corner. I love the size of those windows. I love that for an art studio. I think that's absolutely going to be a wonderful space. But yeah, the the glowing box on the corner works for me. Just it probably needs to be glowinger and boxier and stuff like that. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think I can, I'm in pretty much close agreement with my colleagues on their overall commentary. I think what Philip just said about the white box is compelling. I'm kind of in alignment with him where I don't mind it being different. I almost wonder if it would be more beneficial too to have a little bit more push of that facade out towards the field, or it's like you have kind of a lot of different elements happening that are related to the context, related to each other. I almost want a little bit more push and pull of that facade to help those elements be more defined. In general, the tower still isn't doing it, I don't think. So I think we all know, we all said it. You guys are aware that it needs a little bit more work. But otherwise, feel pretty much in alignment with the other comments made. I think that the rendering of the quad is really compelling. I really, really like the interaction of the old and new, and that really humanizes the scale of this. Yeah, I think that's just really lovely. And I like the distinction, kind of the interpretation of the historic, but in a much more simplified way, and then having a distinctly modern connector between the two. I think works really well. The other thought or question is how this interacts on the parking lot side when you're coming in from the what's it called? Like the Marion Grotto. And you're coming in that way. Is the site changing? Is the parking lot intended to stay the same? Like kind of the way the pedestrian path cuts into the parking lot? Is
So
that gonna stay?
the intent is not to mess with that parking lot.
Okay.
And again, we're just throwing around some wavy drawn lines and that quad. But I think the intention was, so it has to be gated. It will be gated just for security and protection purposes.
Yeah.
But the design intent is to pull in the character of the Marion Mall and the grotto element and pull that into the space. So we're trying to make as much of a seamless landscape as we can, taking our cues from the investment that St. Ignatius made in that area of campus.
And I love, as a, neighborhood user of that swath of space, especially the grotto, we go up to the track lot with our kids, on the weekends. I don't know, and I know that there's a lot of push and pull in terms of parking needs, and the facility, institutional facility does have to accommodate the parking. But does the path of travel for the pedestrian, can there be some sort of push and pull of that parking that lines the building? If you can go to the image that shows this side of the facade, Dan, keep going. I don't know where it is. Maybe it's up.
You want the rendering?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It was right above the quad image.
The other.
I'm sorry. I'm
Rendering images at the end. End of the renderings. Keep going.
I'll keep going.
Stop.
Yep, this one. Thank you. Can the building engage more with the pedestrian pathway? Or is there a reorientation of the parking? Not saying redo the whole parking, but can we visit that strip and perhaps widen the pedestrian so that the whatever the landscaping move is that potentially gets engaged a bit more with that building instead of with the parking lot?
It is.
You don't have to, give the answer right now. It's more just like, is that?
We'll discuss it. That red brick that kind of goes through there is kind of where it is right now.
Yes.
This as a FY, for your information, the parking that's in the slot are for the Jesuits, administrators, and school vans, and some handicap spots, which when we develop a stand, it's needed. So we can consider that. I mean, in theory, I think as we build this thing, that row of parking spots against the building are going to be in the construction zone. So, but Rich and I we'll discuss.
Great, thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
I would just add, when considering a reconfiguration of that tower, or even eliminating it, thinking about Secretary of the Interior and the main building being the most historic, lowering that or eliminating it would allow you to see that historic building more. But the other thing is the proposed material for that asphalt shingle, but that's the slate, the fake slate shape. I like how a lot of the other materials propose reference what's on the historic building, but they're new. And this material, I mean, I feel like it was created as a cheap replacement for slate. And I just think it might be nicer to pick something else to use than the fake, either using real slate or something new manufactured, but that looks more like real slate, or just using a traditional shingle.
Okay. I have about 30 different samples at my desk. I have options.
Since we're not voting on this, are there any other comments? Pat, do you guys feel like you got enough feedback that you can, I guess we have you scheduled for landmarks next week on the 23rd. So take the comments of this committee and then comments of the Landmarks Commission conceptually, and then feel like you have enough to go on at this point?
Yeah, so, but the question is, so we we're through you guys, go through landmarks, and then we come back. So we come back to you for conceptual approach, or is it goes through landmarks? If you guys all agree, then we come back to the next stage. You can just verify that.
Yeah. So you're at concept level review right now. So you're getting feedback from the local committee. Then you'll go to landmarks. They'll also provide you feedback and not take a vote. It's just concept. At that point, you'll have feedback from both bodies. You can go back to the community if that's part of your outreach, but then you develop your final plans and then come back to the Ohio City Design Review Committee with a final plan. And then, after they see it, take action on it, make a recommendation to the Landmarks Commission, you'd go to the Landmarks Commission for final approval.
Got it. Well, thank you for the feedback. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all. We appreciate it. Obviously we appreciate and value the work that you folks do, as well as, we understand our position in the neighborhood, and we want to keep doing a lot of the great things we've been doing. So we're excited about this, and we're excited to see it come to fruition. So we're stepping through the process. So we look forward to next steps.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, Jim, what's next?
Next up, we have another concept for comment. We have case number OC23-14. It's the new construction at West 44th and Lorraine, stretches to West 45th across the back. We have Paul DiVincenzo here, and I see Chad as well. For the project, we received some public comment on that. So after the presentation, before you guys get into your comments, questions, I think Jessica has public comment that she can summarize for you guys. But at this point, I don't know, Chad, or are you giving the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, take it away and let me know when you want me to change slides.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone. We're excited to present two different projects. The first one we'll start with is on the corner of 45th and Lorraine, between 44th and 45th, kind of straddles parts of the block there. We can go to the next slide. You keep going. This shows the lot. What we're doing is combining several lots, like it shows here. There's some that fronts onto Lorraine. There's a portion that goes to 45th, and then another portion that goes to 44th. You can go to the next slide. This one we might refer back to, but just contextually some of the neighborhood buildings for height references, kind of examples that we look to design what we are proposing. You've got a large church on 44th and Bridge. You've got a large building in the middle of the next block on about 40th and Lorraine. You've got a building we built a year or so ago on 41st and Lorraine. There is another building on the corner of 3500 Lorraine, basically Lorraine and Fulton intersection. Additionally, you've got the McCafferty Center, which is right across the street from our project. And then another building on Lorraine that I refer to as the Urban Twine property. Generally, all these buildings range from the mid 40s to upwards of almost 70 feet tall. So to give some context of the heights. This is a shot of the existing property and some of the existing conditions. Overall, what you see kind of in the middle of the upper left picture is it's a large vacant parking lot. Currently, it was formerly used as a funeral home, a daycare. The property next to us, which is not included in this proposal, is a commercial, public, kind of a charitable kind of business that they do tool rentals, from what our understanding is. You've got the gas station on the corner, which is not part of this project. You have a car dealership and an auto mechanic shop that kind of wrap the corner on 45th. Again, really just kind of details of the neighborhood. Well, I would go back one more just so we can talk. So the upper right picture is the 44th part of it. To the right is a home, and to the left is the gas station, and where we will propose the garage vehicular access would come out on 44th through this portion. Again, down in the bottom right corner is the frontage on Lorraine. You could go to the next, thank you. So this is a diagram of the site plan, giving you an idea, again, of the entrance on the garage area would come off of 44th. What you see on the Lorraine portion is the lobby and the new retail space we would create. The plan does include removing the existing or former funeral home daycare building. And then along 45th, I apologize, we want to create walk-up units, really making that side of the building very residential, kind of tying into the neighborhood there, bringing some people and eyes onto the street. And then obviously, like I mentioned, the garage would exit onto 44th, headed south towards the Lorraine intersection. Overall, we've got about 62 parking spaces in the garage. We have several areas that we'll be able to have bike storage. We estimate about 35 plus bikes will be able to be stored in those areas. We've got on the right side of the picture where you see a gray area, that's where a trash compactor would be. The way the building's set up right now is we would have a trash chute that comes down into the lower corner, kind of right off of 45th. Maintenance would haul trash into the compactor, and then it would be removed from the building and taken out off of the property on 44th. The side of the south portion of that gray area, we have some setback from the gas station. So that's where whenever we would pull the dumpsters out, we would put them there. Another important thing too, because this is close to the corner, we know there's pedestrian traffic. We've heard obviously several comments from the neighbors about how busy the intersection is currently, and just some traffic concerns that they have. The building before the sidewalk is set back almost 12 feet. And then on the internal portion of the garage, we want to have secured parking. It's an open air structure, so there doesn't need to be a enclosed garage door. We are looking for, I guess, advice or some feedback on what that looks like. What we would propose could be a gate inside of the building, but essentially where you see those two stairs, you would have that secured access point about 20 plus feet inside of the building, almost 30 feet. So the garage door itself or the gate would actually not be very seeable from the street. It would be almost 40 feet back from the street. Again, it's an open air structure, so we could have it be vertical spindles, something that's very see-through, very much not an opaque door, but just something that provides security so that people can't access the interior of the garage when they're not supposed to. We've also got a couple spaces that would be left outside of that gate towards 44th, which could be used for guest parking, could be used in some of the comments with city planning is even potentially a public bike repair area in those areas, and we'd be open to doing that. Just looking for feedback on that as well. We could go to the next. I do want to point out, go back to the set, thank you. Where the bike storage is shown in this picture on the upper left corner, we would also have pedestrian access out to 45th. So the bikes could come out of the building and go back in, kind of coming in and out of that side of the property or out of 44th, but it just gives them a nice way to enter and exit from 45th. You could go to the next, thank you. This is a typical second floor site plan overview. What we've done on the portion of the building that fronts on 44th, it's a 3-story property that would have apartments on the second floor and third floor. In the middle, the two buildings actually do not adjoin. And then you have the larger building kind of off to the center of the property and facing 44th or 45th. Again, you front up on Lorraine where it's showing some 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. With the unit mix that we're proposing here, very similar to what we did at 41 West, we're looking to create some more affordable type of units. They're smaller sizes, which allow us to rent for less overall cost. Our last project at 41 West, we're able to hit 20% of the building was able to hit 80% AMI without any city incentives. We have applied for one of the current programs the city administration has out there. If we're able to do that, we'll target 60% AMI for a portion of it. So really looking to create something that's affordable. That's also why we put in 3 bedrooms and where we could in this building. Again, help families be able to move into the neighborhood, but just generally making more opportunity for an affordable option. Go to the next slide. I guess I will jump overall, especially due to some of the small sizes. We have 92 units, and you'll see those throughout, obviously, these pictures. This is, again, just a mirror of the second floor. This is the 3rd floor, yeah. And then here would be the 4th floor, the top of the main building. You're looking at the roof of the building that fronts on 44th. Overall, the proposed height of the highest point of this building is 51 feet. Again, very much in line with the rest of the buildings we showed pictures in the beginning. You can go to the next slide. The top portion of this elevation shows the gas station on the right corner. It's got a portion of the car dealership, and there's also a vacant lot that they own as part of their property on the left side. Where you see the storefront type of glass on the 1st floor would be the entrance to the building and the retail space. And then above that is where the residential units would start. It's a sprawling picture, I guess is the best way to look at it. It's hard to describe what the angle particularly, but as you see over on the right side of the top picture, that is the 3-story building that would front and act as the entrance to the parking area. Again, it's in this picture you can see it's an open face, almost a porte cochere where people can drive through and access the parking that's in the back area. On the bottom picture is a view looking, it's a west facing, but looking east on 44th. Again, where we've put balconies on pretty much all of the units, bringing people to be able to look out on the street, interact with the street. On the ground level right now, we're showing walk-up units, creating 6 of those along 45th. Really, I think that'll help activate it. To the left of the bottom picture, you can see the tool. It's a Lutheran, I apologize for the name, Lutheran Services building where they have the tool rentals. And then on the right of it, to the right side is the auto mechanic station, and then to the right of that is the car dealership. This view is the north elevation facing north. You're looking south again. It does not show the Lutheran building that would obstruct a bit of it from this view. We have an open air parking garage, like I mentioned. So the greenery is something to decorate and kind of cover we want to have security, so there'd be a gate of some sort behind that greenery, but we want to have some moss wall, some type of live greenery that softens that and allows the air to flow through, obviously. The east elevation on the bottom is, again, if your back was to the McCafferty Center looking west, you're looking at the 3-story building and then the side of the main property. This picture shows maybe a glass garage door. It's it's up for discussion right now, but importantly, treating the ground level of the 44th building, we wanted to have it be more residential. So we've put some nice glass type of doors in. They would be the access point for the trash removal, but also the one on the right is really just trying to give some symmetry and mirror what's happening on the left. We could go to the next slide. Again, just another view. This one kind of shows how far back that access point into the garage is on the on the 44th side. It's, like I mentioned, approximately 30 to 40 feet back from the sidewalk. We think what that will do for us too is give plenty of time for a car to pull out of the garage, not be forced out onto the street, and then you have loading space for another car all before you hit even the sidewalk. some of the feedback again we've gotten is not so much directed at us, but the current situation on that corner is there's a lot of traffic. People have complained of a lot of people speeding, not necessarily following the laws or the speed limits. So that's something we can't change, but providing a softer access onto 44th is what we're trying to achieve by doing that. Again, this is another view of the 45th portion of the building. We tried to step the materials back and use different looks so that it wasn't just a massive wall lining the building on either side, but trying to keep and blend in with the surrounding properties and the textures that they've got. Right now, it'd be fiber cement and brick would be the main components of it. We can go to the next one. Okay, here's a color palette of what we're proposing. Similar colors to some of the other buildings we've done in the neighborhood. Again, just trying to blend in without standing out too much, but creating our own identity with this property. This slide is going to show, just for reference, some of the other buildings up and down Lorraine over the last decade or two even that have been torn down. Similar situation, our building that's on the frontage of Lorraine, it's in very rough shape. It's gone through a number of modifications over the years. It was originally built in the mid 1800s. In early 1900, 1925 or so, it went through a significant modification, kind of eliminating its original context into what you might call French-inspired type of building now. Really, when you look around on Lorraine, there are no French buildings that we've seen over there. Some of the ones in the past may have been, but not what's represented there now. For cost reasons, building and being efficient inside the parking area, it just is not practical for us to save it. What happens when you try to save different portions, you end up pushing back the stairwell, the elevators, all those different things interfere with parking and just a practical building site that we're trying to achieve here. And really, when we've evaluated it, and when you look at the block, while we have not secured or purchased the gas station or the car dealership or the vacant lot immediately to the left of our property on Lorraine, there could be some new buildings in the future, and conserving the one building there really kind of throws a mishmash of different textures, buildings, and the opportunity to create almost 3 whole new frontages if the gas station was to be developed, if the corner where the car dealership is to be developed, you lose the context of what was there. And the building, again, is just not in very good shape. Unfortunately, too, another impact, the city removed one of their programs, the vacant property initiatives, which again, for buildings like this, it's a shame, but it helps, that program used to help overcome some of the cost challenges. Now without that, it makes it quite a bit more difficult to consider conserving it. Go to the next. And that's the brief overview of it, and excited to hear some feedback and comments and take it from there.
Yeah, and before the committee gets into it, I think Jessica had was going to summarize the public comments that we received, and then I see we have Nate Lull and Mr. Ben Trimble from OCI. I don't know if there were comments from OCI after Jessica, that if they want to share those before the committee gets into it. But Jessica, public comment, please.
So they were shared with the committee. We received 6 public comments over the course of earlier this week from Mr. Rooney, Mr. and Mrs. Camargo Jr., Ms. Anderson, Mr. Camargo Sr., Mr. Sattler, and a Ms. Sattler. The summary of most of the comments is they found for the 45 West project, the scales out of context for the area. They had concerns over the ingress and egress points and that single entry and exit along 44th. They had all of them mentioned concerns with traffic and safety in that area and that intersection and along Lorraine. They said The size and height is not consistent with the neighborhood. Materials are not consistent with the neighborhood. They had questions on the loss of trees and landscaping, light pollution, concerns with that front-loading garage along West 44th, suggestions for stepping back the height on Lorraine, questions on the suitability and practicality of the green wall section, and comment on the the proposed demolition of the old nun funeral home and the question of the status of that building and wanting to preserve the history of that building. I think that summarized all of them. Oh, parking and visitors and congestion. There you go.
All right, Ben, Nate, did you guys have anything you wanted to add?
Good morning, everybody, or afternoon rather, it's 2 p.m. Just wanted to share the community process. I won't get so much into feedback because I think everything that's been mentioned is Jessica just covered. So this project was at the Ohio City monthly community meeting in February of this year. I believe Chad and his team have met with a block club or two. And then last night there was also a meeting that the development team hosted at their offices. So it's also been posted on Corbinize, which we have a lot of comments on, and we'll continue to get the information out about the process as it continues. So thank you.
Thank you. I guess with that, Mr. Chair.
Well, there's a lot to absorb here, and my first reaction is that this is, the page that you've got up here, for example, I don't think is portraying a real picture because it doesn't really demonstrate that the building on the right is separate. It looks like it's a whole giant thing wrapping around the corner here, which would be just too massive. But I think the larger portion of the building is disturbing to me because it's too massive and monolithic, and also the portrayal of the colors is foreign to the neighborhood, except, well, now I go back to this, I see you've got some brick and some other colors, but the mixture of grays and stuff that I see in these other views is disturbing to me. So the stuff that you've got here on the right does, I guess I have some concerns about the green wall. Looks like it's arbitrary. It's just floating in here. I think it may be useful or important to modify the massing of this building so it's just not this, hulking 4-story thing that goes back. And, I understand the need to change materials. You're not going to do a brick all over everything, but it has an institutional quality to it is something that is a descriptor that jumps out at me here. And so I guess those are my initial thoughts.
Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, I guess my thought, a question, the green wall, is that outside or is that like a hallway that just faces the, is that actually on the outside of the building?
Yes, so the green wall essentially is bordering the parking structure, and there would be, like I mentioned, the access point for bike and pedestrian access off of 45th. What we didn't want to do, there's a building on 32nd and Detroit called Edge 32, where they have a similar open air parking structure. And along 32nd, it's a brick wall. And I just generally, as I've been in the neighborhood, I live right around the corner. It's not very inviting. It's pretty just hulking. So this was our initial concept on how do we soften an open air parking garage, again, providing security, but also making it look better than just a brick wall to provide access, prevent access.
Um, yeah, no, I totally understand that. I think one of the comments that I saw from one of the neighborhood things was that, oh, it's going to turn brown and be dead all winter and things like that. And it kind of echoed that. And I guess I was thinking that I'd seen a really cool example of a wall where they had a south-facing hallway and they just had plantings on the inside face of the wall of the hallway, like in the interior, so that, sun hit it, still green, kind of reflected through the windows. And I thought that was kind of a cool use of a green wall. I think I agree with you about large swaths of brick that makes me think of like housing projects and things like that, that I feel like, I remember from childhood that they're not great. That said, I think there's opportunities to engage with communities if you're looking at art or anything like that, murals on the sides of brick walls or things like that, kind of really liven up the space and the neighborhood and bring back color and things like that. I am these large swaths are these all smooth hardy panel?
Some would be smooth, some would be siding. The architects are on too, and they could. It's hard to tell from some of the pictures. Yes.
Gotcha. I think there would be, for whatever hardy, there would be more reveals there, because I think there are, what, 4x8 panels, so we would have a whole network of additional lines, all around all around some of these like vertical pieces. And I think the verticality of it is kind of might be something that's um screwing with it a little bit, might be adding too much more to the vertical, sense that everybody's thinking it's towering over everything, because there's so many things that are just large, areas of smooth panel going straight up. That said, I think this corner, this image, is, yeah, I think, I think a lot of that, and I think a lot of that is kind of it makes me think of an older style of some of those, like, medical buildings in the neighborhood where it's just large swaths of brick and concrete and things like that with narrow windows. There might be a better way to break that up. And then lastly, I think that corner right there, was it the Lorraine 45th corner, that perspective that you had? Just not that one. I think it was that one. Um, this feels really busy to me. It feels like there's just a lot of things going on. There's all of the horizontal lines, there's all of the vertical lines that are competing with it. There's panels in the railing, there's, trim and panels above the panels, and then all of the additional easy trim that might be added if you're using hardy panel. Um, it seems like you have a simple um, bunch of materials that you can choose from. It just seems like these elevations need simplified. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Hi, Chad. I, I think you have a very difficult site plan here, and so I'm sympathetic to you. You've got a lot of challenges here. Well, one of them is the demolition of the old brick building there, and I'm not sure, I have not been inside of it, but I have studied it from the outside. And I'm not sure what this committee or Landmarks Commission will feel about demolition. That'll have a huge potential impact on the site plan itself. And so I think we will want to get a handle on that and resolve that issue before proceeding too much further down the line, so we know exactly what we're dealing with. And then I'll second many of the comments from that Jessica stated from the community. You have a large swath on 45th there, and on the north side, and those are, if I'm not mistaken, two-family zoning areas. And so I would really suggest that the building step down to meet that two-family zoning height, be 35 feet or so. And so it's not such an abrupt juxtaposition. Edge 32 on Detroit and 32nd. It's, I think, 6 stories or so. When it backs up along 32nd, it steps down to, I think, 3 stories. So something like that where, I don't think anyone's going to balk at the height on Lorraine Avenue, but as it steps down into the 2-family district, that the buildings step down as well. And the materiality, I'll agree with pretty much everything that everyone else has said. The buildings on Lorraine are usually brick or they're flat. And I think you've added a lot of detail to the brick. Here, at least the image that's on the screen, if you continue that throughout, then I think, and maybe even set back the top story, then it won't feel necessarily as institutional. And I have to agree too with the green wall. It's a great intention. It's a great idea. I know when Graham does green wall on the south side of his building there on 29th, in the winter, it has to be covered over. I think he replants it most springs, if I remember right, requires irrigation. And so it might be more than you're signing up for. And so just consider the maintenance of that and what it looks like year round. I think that could give you more headaches than what you bargained for. And then I will also agree with the comment about the garage door there on 44th. We don't allow garage doors to be primary facing facades in the historic district. I appreciate that that's set back. That does do a lot to ameliorate that. But if there's other ways of addressing that, I'd like to explore that further. And then finally, as Philip brought up and others have brought up, there's large swaths of this with just plain paneling. I think we need more detail, more architecture on those as well. And that's on all sides of it. So generally, in a nutshell, that's it. But I would really suggest that the buildings step down as it goes into the neighborhood, and that we resolve what the site plan is going to be vis-a-vis the demolition of the existing building.
Absolutely. And if I might comment, some of the feedback we've heard from neighbors, we've had 3 different meetings where we've been able to get feedback in addition to online. Some people have asked that it comes one or we have 2 entrances, one off of 45th. Our initial take on this was obviously it is a busy street on 44th, so we tended to lean towards that side for the vehicular access. We're open to putting something on 45th. I guess I would want to hear some feedback if that's something the committee would think is appropriate to have access out onto 45th. For us, it's just part of the plans. We're open to that, but yeah, I totally hear you guys all, especially with the green wall, maybe the maintenance on it. We could explore synthetic material, but art is something that I think would be really nice as well. Could dress it up, and so there's definitely a lot we can do. And then also on the demo, one of the things too, again, I'd love to hear some feedback. There is 2 roof lines on the building, and the back portion of the building that where the roof line changes, kind of running north, is one that we did explore demolishing, and we had landmarks out back when Don Pettit was still with the committee, and we talked about modifying the building. So that's something we did explore and we're willing to potentially if it needs to happen, where we would most likely keep the main Lorraine facing structure up front. And also, just to give another point I didn't bring up earlier, the challenge with the building currently, especially for future retail use or any type of use, the windows on it, I don't know if some of the existing pictures show it well. It's very small, almost like 2 double hung windows. You can kind of see it in this picture there on the right. It doesn't give a very good opportunity for retail to expose itself to the street and to the neighbors. So that might have to change a bit too if it was to potentially stay. So I guess just throwing that out there to hear some feedback on the modification to the building potentially.
Well, perhaps that could be, again, I guess I put in their chat, so I don't know what's going on inside. But if there's, it could potentially be in the lobby to your building. There's ways of reworking it that keeps it, but yet makes it useful and helpful to your project.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
And I would just add that my reaction to this volume of building, I mean, if you could take some bites out of it, you know, maybe you'll lose a couple of units here and there, but articulate the volume of the building instead of the kind of continuous facades that, although you've tried to articulate the surface of it with balconies and fenestration and so forth, I'm thinking it could benefit from articulating the volume as well. Create some negative spaces along that line of the facade so it doesn't appear so massive.
In the materiality, I mean, I would greatly favor brick used for all. I mean, hopefully this building will be here long after we're gone, Chad, and that we're contributing to the historic district just as the other historic buildings are, and to really use long-lasting materials. And not that Hardy's not long-lasting, but it's not. Well, I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, I hear you guys with the brick on Lorraine, and I don't actually disagree with you guys at all.
Can you go back to a site plan, Dan? The entry level site plan? I'm sorry, guys. My two of my kids have come home with pink eyes, so there's gonna be some background noise happening. Thank you. So I think where my issue with what is being proposed in front of us right now is, guys, I can't help you right now. Jean, sorry. Sorry.
It's okay.
Is that, no, Chad, I know you understand.
Oh, yeah.
So right now we kind of have like a really awkward site plan, and I totally understand what you're, not holding the corner is probably a huge disappointment for this developmentally, but it's just to extrude such an unusual parcel situation like this outline you have shown in the orange is just really resulting in a building that's really fighting itself form wise. And I think I am also hesitant on the full demolition of that building because I did the I was the architect on the proposal for demoing the back half of that site, so I'm very familiar with the building and the history of the building. I think it would be really open and interesting to preserving a part of that facade, if that's something like you had said. I think that that's super interesting, but I do think that there should be a workable contingency in the event that you're not able to demolish that. I also think what might be very interesting is approaching this project as separate buildings. I'm not sure if you guys have done that before, but I feel like if you are open to considering this, that there might be some really interesting and successful ways to configure this site with a more traditional approach to how Lorraine has developed. Like you mentioned earlier, like the hodgepodge kind of Lorraine and the not wanting to have a hodgepodge resultant site here in the event that either corner gets developed. But I actually think what you're proposing here is fighting the context of Lorraine more broadly, more so. It's almost like embrace that you could have where you have the lobby and the retail space, or potentially the historic building and a new construction, as a more traditional structure of what we are kind of experiencing on the rhythm of Lorraine, where it's like you have like a long, skinny shotgun style building, and then there's an internal courtyard, or there's an internal parking, or there is even creation of a secondary private alleyway to feed those buildings. And then you can potentially line the perimeter of this site that's facing 44th and 45th and Lorraine with the active programming uses of these buildings. It's almost like just rethinking, if you're open to it, going back to what Lorraine is, which is, businesses with apartments above and parking behind, and kind of approaching the site that way. Almost more leaning into the infill feeling of it, more in the more traditional sense. I'm sorry, that was a lot of words. I hope that came across.
It's actually a very interesting idea of breaking it up into different buildings. And I don't know if you or your team have thought about that, but that's the first I've heard of it, but I think it's actually a very interesting idea.
We did look at several. I mean, it's a unique shape of a lot, so it kind of is. It's been a challenging one and a lot of different iterations, I guess, so to speak, to put it together. But there are some challenges practically when you look to break it up. Creating multiple elevators, multiple staircases, you really start to lose any real efficiency with the buildings, having them disconnected. Even the one off of 44th, which is disconnected right now, that one would create its own challenges. Then you have the next one, and you have tons of staircases, so it hurts itself and almost honestly doesn't. It's not practical. It's not something we've been able to make sense of, and even I think the current owner of the funeral home building, they've looked at it a number of ways and really been challenged on how do you get this to the next step. But yeah, also too, going back to some of the comments about stepping it back, that's absolutely something we've heard and we're happy to look at doing, and I think that would reduce it. But also, like you're saying, so it's not fighting itself, maybe making it more uniform in certain ways with a tasteful look and design where there's not a bunch of panels, things like that.
This is Tim Donahue with MA Design. Just wanted to kind of speak to some of the points that Chad brought up. The kind of breaking it up into 3 different buildings. In a lot of ways, it actually already is. I would agree with the comment about probably putting more brick on Lorraine. I think probably having a little more prominent front there. The building on 44th, like Chad said, is right now it's kind of an 8-unit, 3-story building, so it's kind of a walk-up separate building. We tried to give that kind of more of a residential scale, residential feel on that one. Then there's kind of more of a kind of townhouse, which I agree can kind of be broken down a little bit more, kind of simplified, kind of looking back at kind of the older townhouses where the buildings are kind of, very, very much kind of repetitive. That have a nice rhythm there. We can refine some of the details on that. So right now, it's kind of the visual problem for the site is that, we have those 2 corners that are exposed. And right now you're seeing a lot of the innards of the building kind of connecting all the pieces together. So that's just one thought that we had. So.
Wanted to chime in that regarding the potential demolition of the old non-Coleman funeral home. That's something we'll be scheduling a site visit with the local committee and Landmarks Commission members. Chad, we can talk later today about when we could get something on the books for that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on this one? Anyone want to see any other views before we move on, or?
And I didn't budget more time than this for the call today, but I have to hop off. But I just wanted to reiterate, Chad, I did go ahead and look through the plans for 50th, and my comments would be virtually identical to the ones here for 44th. Questioning again the demolition of the site plan, materiality, and asking that it step down as it goes into the 2-family district. So my comments would largely be the same. I apologize, I can't stay for the rest of the call, but you have my initial feedback anyways.
Understood. It's been a long morning.
Yeah,
so
thank you for almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I appreciate everyone sticking around for all this.
And Dan,
I have to. So I was going to say I have to hop as well, but I think a lot of the commentary that was expressed during the 45th discussion, I would also have the same commentary for the 50th as well. But appreciate the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Chad, do you feel like you've got enough feedback on this one that we should move on to the next one, or is there no
Absolutely.
other comments? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then we will jump on to case number OC 23-15. It's West 50th and Lorraine, new construction, same developer, same project representatives. We have Chad and Tim here, and yeah, take it away, Chad.
Thank you. So this project is essentially the corner from 50th in Lorraine to 52nd in Lorraine. If we can go to the next slide. Again, showing the site. We've got Urban Community School on the right in this picture. There's a building called Nook and Cranny on the left off of the corner of 40 or 52nd. Across the street north, most of that entire block, except for Sense Pizza, which is a great place if you haven't been there yet, check it out. It's really good. That's the only business that's active on that whole north side. And then you've got another business that just opened up called the Judith over on 52nd, another great business in the neighborhood. But our block, as well as that, is pretty much vacant and really almost completely underused or utilized in its current form. Our plan includes tearing down a couple of buildings that are on the site, as well as a house that actually steps out of the landmarks district on 52nd, and then building on some open area and some green space. We can go to the next slide. Again, similar pictures from before. Again, noting this one on 47th is the other, I don't know the exact project name, but it's some Kinez townhouses, 4-story townhouses that front on Lorraine and then wrap down 47th Street. Again, all these different buildings and heights range from 40s upwards of, like I mentioned prior, almost 70 feet tall. And another point I just do want to bring up is the height limit on Lorraine is 60 feet. So what we're proposing is actually below that height limit currently. Again, another context photo. The upper right picture is the Sense Pizza on the right. Our corner building is on the left. The upper left picture is a shot looking south at our site. You can see there's a lot of open area that we plan to build starting from the right side, which is 52nd, going towards Urban Community, which is on the left. The bottom right picture, again, is the corner building that we currently are working on preserving and saving. And then the bottom left picture is that grass space I mentioned on 52nd. So again, we've met with a number of the neighbors in the community. We met with Urban Community Schools representative and heard some initial feedback from them. Our first take was to put the parking exiting onto 50th, thinking it was maybe a more commercial use already. But for us, it's a matter of switching it, so we had no issue. We switched this over to 52nd now for the garage entrance to come in and out of that side of the building versus 50th. Seemed to make the UCS representatives much more pleased with that, and for their future growth, which we're excited to hear about. They're continuing to grow and expand, and it's great for the community. Along Lorraine, the corner space you see is the existing retail. The retail that is next to that would be new created retail. And then what we also have next to that is our lobby amenity area. This would be a community space where we envision a lot of activity, artwork, obviously a really nice lobby to decorate and kind of give that presence on Lorraine. The left corner is a very small space. Tim, I don't know if you know exactly how big that is, but a comment we heard recently was, we thought of maybe using that as a bike storage area, but someone suggested that maybe we use it as retail. I have to check with building code if it's too small of a space and it's actually allowed to be used as retail, but I think it would be something we'd be open to. Also to point out though, almost the entire north block, the block to our west and a lot of the blocks to the east are still vacant retail. Don't want to saturate this neighborhood with too much retail. There's not a demand and no one's able to fill. So we want to see it be successful, but if it's practical to use the space in the left corner of this picture as retail, we're open to it. Overall,
sorry to interrupt that. The little gray space is a little under 400 square feet. So
I guessed about 300 or so. That was my
Like
guess.
378 or whatever.
Yeah, so it's tight. Again, I'd have to see what a city occupancy allows and something like that, and fire exits and all that. But love to hear your all feedback on if that should be utilized as a retail space or not. But we're open to feedback. Again, planning of over 35 bike spaces inside the garage. Even without that, we've got some mechanicals in this picture, as you see. Some of the other feedback we've heard too, would love to hear this committee's, but putting maybe some residential units on 50th and 52nd. So we might lose some parking spaces, but increase the friendliness of the building, making it more pedestrian friendly, really adding some walk-ups on both sides of the street, I think could be a really nice amenity to the neighbors and to the building, and just accessibility wise, different types of people. We could go to the next slide though. This is the second floor. So it's a U-shaped building facing south. Again, an open air parking structure. Similar concept you'll see with the green walls that we proposed on 45th. This building is replicating some of that. This amenity deck is just that. It's an open air portion that would be covering part of the parking area. We envision having potentially a pool, other amenity areas, but an outdoor gathering space for tenants. We could go to the next. On top of the corner existing building, we plan to utilize that as a rooftop patio space. What you see in this building or this floor plan is the club room where it's labeled is actually a community room where the tenants would gather. You'll see it more clearly in the renderings. It's actually a 2-story room where the 4th floor would also overlook this space and be a really nice view of downtown. Just another good interior amenity space for the tenants. We could keep going. Yep. That's why you start to see it not shown on as a usable area when you get up to this floor, 4th floor, which replicates the other floors. Again, going with affordability, we've really worked on making the units a good practical size. What we saw at 41 West, got a great mix of people. We have a number of units in the Ohio City neighborhood and different price points. Our 41 West has really been able to attract a more broad range of people to live there. People with their first job, restaurant workers, all types of people, which we really want to continue to see come into the neighborhood and have opportunities. So that's what's driven most of our unit sizes as well. So from a unit count and parking perspective, I just wanted to point out this project has about 107 units and 88 parking spaces. So we could go to the elevations. This top picture is your back to Sen's Pizza looking south. What we've done here is obviously you see on the left the utilization of the top of the building. Some feedback too we've heard already was at least how it shows in this picture, was probably intended as a spindle type of railing system. We would make that a glass railing so it doesn't interfere and compete with the building. Kind of gives the building its own identity or maintains its identity. Treating that wall behind that roof deck of the new construction portion with some type of greenery. Hearing the feedback today too, we'd be open to putting some type of artwork up there, but we didn't want to just have a bare wall up there facing that. The glass windows that you see to the right of the existing building would be part on the ground level, part of the retail. As you go up on the 2nd floor would be an apartment, and then the 3rd floor is where you access the community room, and the 4th floor is again a 2nd story open space internally. Treating the frontage on Lorraine as, again, the typical commercial retail look is what we've done here. Again, it's a mix of retail, lobby, and some building space that we may be able to make as additional retail on the corner of 52nd. The elevation on the bottom portion is the 52nd. If you're looking at 52nd, so to speak, the existing building to remain is the far left corner, if you want to put it, and then kind of looking that way. There's buildings that block this whole view from being seen at once, but that's what you're looking at here. We also weren't able to update this rendering to show the garage coming out of it, but the intention is that the garage would exit on this side of the building, taking up a couple of those green wall spaces. But you know, our feeling, and after hearing some good feedback from the neighbors, which, to be frank, we've heard plenty of great comments. A lot of people have reached out to us. We've heard businesses reach out to us and say they're very excited for it. The ones in the immediate neighborhood are happy to hear there's more people potentially coming. So we're getting some good response. But I think it would be nice to add walk-up units along 52nd here, which would eliminate those green walls, but really bring some activity at the street level. And then again, we'd want to do that potentially on the 50th side of the building also. You could keep going too. Another, I just wanted to point out, so it's clear, almost all of the units will have balconies, or generally all of them. The intention is to have balconies. So again, lots of outside activity. We own a building called, and built a building called Clinton West. And to me, it's one of the more charming things is to see everybody's different version of patio furniture and how they relax. So I think it's another great way, especially as the weather starts to change. We get a ton of people that really like to open their doors and be outside and enjoy the 2 months of Cleveland weather. That's good to be outside. The south elevation that we're looking at is one no one would really see. It's looking north, kind of if you were in the middle of the property in the back, but just really the black space, it wouldn't be black per se. It's, again, an open air structure, so there's some support columns lifting the building up to the second story. And then what you see in the top picture on the right is a church that's on 50th. Then there's a home that's next to it. The home, for whatever it's worth, is owned by Urban Community Schools. Again, we've talked to them and they're pretty happy with what we're working on. The lower picture is if your back was to Urban Community. Again, that garage door would be flipped to the 52nd side. So it's right now, in theory, it would be some of these green panels or decorative alternatives. One thing on the existing building I want to point out is towards the corner there are currently bricked over single double hung type of windows. We wanted to expand that and make it more of a retail friendly type of exposure. So we would propose expanding those openings, making them more of a storefront. So again, hopefully more success for the retail business to get exposure to the street that goes there and kind of opening it up a bit more. There would also be a door out to 50th from that retail space, in addition to the corner entrance it has. You could go to the next one too. Again, this kind of just shows the 50th corner view of it. Again, I think it would be very nice aesthetically, very nice practically if we put walk-up units along 50th right there. Again, mirrored on 52nd would really add a lot of walkability and friendliness to the street, kind of going with the residential look to it. You could go to the next slide. Thank you. Just another shot from the 52nd corner, how it kind of wraps. You can see the building to the right, which again, I call it Nook and Cranny. That's the business that's there. It's a very large 3-story building. It's pretty close to the height of what we're proposing. I think it's for sure above 40 feet. And so that's really where we're getting some of the context. There's an industrial warehouse next to it, which fronts on 52nd as well, which is actually equal, if not a little bit taller than this building. But again, there's a lot of height and mass over there currently. We could go to the next slide too. Sample of the materials, similar as the last product, basically some fiber cement, some brick, obviously some aluminum on the storefronts, and then the greenery we're proposing. We could go to the next slide. Same reference as we showed down the street. Sadly, some of these buildings were charming. Some of them really had not much character. Unfortunately, ironically, I think the picture that's in the middle on the left was 52nd. It's a pretty cute building. I don't know the history with it, but that was or is currently demolished. There was a building in the top left corner, which was demolished just last year for urban community schools. It's a hazard. The buildings in the middle and along the top. One is where the Sherwin-Williams building is now built. We've got a number of other scattered ones that up and down the Rain over the years really haven't been able to be saved or preserved. And we looked at saving both buildings. The one in the middle or the second one in from the corner is, again, very challenging. It's tough to make it make sense practically. Again, without help from the city to preserve it, it really adds almost an financially feasible way to preserve it. Just achieving a good overall new building that creates its own identity is why we're proposing to tear it down. And that's really all. I'm happy to hear some feedback.
I'll go. I agree with my other colleagues who had to jump that said some similar aesthetic considerations for this one, similar to the 44th development. I like a lot of the suggestions you made in terms of moving away from the green wall or creating walk-up units. I think that all of that is on the right track. I'd really love to see that. For the one that's up above and that looking down on that amenity space, looking at your plans, would you consider swapping the trash room studio stack with the stair tower so that the studios can have windows that look down into that amenity space, and then we can engage that facade with some windows that add value to those units?
Do you, just so I'm clear, where do you mean here?
Yeah, so the 2-bedroom holds the corner, and then you have the stair tower, and that stair tower is what kind of creates that blank facade on that north-facing
Yeah.
piece. Could you swap because below it's like trash room, then studio, I think.
Yeah.
Could you swap those, but the studios can be cornered?
Yeah, that's a great point.
We can look at it. One of the reasons we have the stair up against the existing building is we don't know the existing height of those floors, so we might have to use that stair to access that second floor of the existing building.
Okay, I
So,
think,
But I like the suggestion. I think that
yes.
with having glass, and that could actually probably almost be a primary facade then for that studio unit. So
Yeah, I think it would be a great value add
Yeah.
for
you have great views too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was pretty, I think perhaps less gray in general overall. It sounds like you've done a lot of due diligence with this one in particular with neighbors and stakeholders. And I do like a lot of the ideas that you said that you were hoping to integrate. So I think to that end, like that kind of summarizes how my feedback at this point for this one. And Chad, separately, I know there was a lot of touch on the broader infrastructure issues of both of these sites. And I think that would be great to, and I already mentioned this to OCI, is maybe getting together like a stakeholder meeting with 44th to 54th and having kind of like, we have a lot of advocacy to do towards the city in terms of infrastructure improvements in this stretch, especially if we're going to be adding a lot more units to the corridor, which would be great. So I just want to put that out there to acknowledge some of the feedback you've been getting. And it is not one developer's problem to solve. It's up to all of us to advocate to the city for our infrastructure. So
yeah, and we have we had at the meeting we had at our office last night, someone asked us if we would spearhead the conversation with the city. My response was, we absolutely want a safe neighborhood. We don't want to see any of our tenants or visitors to a retail space be a problem. We want it to be safe for our tenants and visitors to the retail space at the same hand. So
yeah, it's a broader advocacy issue that I know you guys will be engaged on. So I just wanted to mention that. But I think that's it from.
Yeah. And I do want to mention too, some of the other comments that we've had was maybe looking at a different color brick and swapping that around, and we're working on that potentially. I've heard the setback also off of Lorraine, maybe pushing that back, kind of similar to what we might talk about on 45th. So that's also something we're exploring, and And we have some, I believe, some good options for that too that we'll be happy to move on with as well. So.
I just want to echo what my colleagues have said so far. I do like the idea of stepping down, kind of into the houses. There are about 8 houses or 9 houses or a church, something like that back there. And I guess I always think it's kind of funny with the pool deck overlooking the handful of houses back there. So I guess I would think of like screening and things like that being important, or plantings, or things along the deck being important. We talked about the art as opposed to green wall, which I think you have a wonderful spot to do it up there on that corner. Looks very prominent, and it sounds like a great contribution to the neighborhood. And yeah, this design to me felt very fleshed out. Like it felt very, clean, and it felt very straightforward, which I really appreciated, especially compared to the other one. The blue was getting me. I was only seeing blue on the elevations. And I can see that the brick is um, not that, but yeah, I don't know. You're using blues to complement it. I'm just not sure what's happening with the brick at the moment. Yeah, I'm only seeing blue, and I can't tell if that's only my that's just my screen or something. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and that glass tower on the corner um feels like it might need to be broken up a little bit, but um and I'm not sure, maybe there's some brick banding or something in it. Yeah, that is a little bit of an odd feature in this neighborhood, I think. That's all I got.
Thank you.
And I think I've heard people recommending stepping building down on Lorraine, but then I've also heard people suggest stepping it down towards the residential on the side streets. Just kind of from an urbanist perspective, usually like Lorraine seems like it would be much more want to be like the 4-story building and stepping it down towards the residential, but I just want to get a clarification on that.
My thought was stepping it down towards the residential. Lorraine does seem like it's the prominent facade, so it would make sense to have the taller heights there. There might be in this case, there might be something you need to do to mediate between the shorter building on the corner and the rest of it. But in general, my proposal is to lower it towards the residential.
Yeah, not too many committee members left at this point.
Yeah, just noticed that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Phil, you may, or yeah, you may be it, Phil. So yeah, I think that was what Phil was saying about stepping it down towards residential. I've honestly heard kind of both perspectives as far as that goes. So that's probably not real helpful. I guess the end of the historic district is, like the back of your property. So yeah, I don't know if people, then you have the tracks just to the north or south of that. So it is kind of getting to the southern edge of the neighborhood. So, I think some people have felt that, getting more dense back there is fine because, there's not a whole lot of the neighborhood left, but then there certainly is the perspective of, Lorraine being where the density and height should go, and then step it back into the, smaller scale residential. So, yeah, I don't, it's probably not real helpful for what you were looking for, Tim.
Yeah. I appreciate the thoughts though.
Yeah, and same as the other, the 44th, 45th and Lorraine, the potential for the demo there. Since you're talking about removing a couple buildings here in the district, we'll need to schedule a site visit and get members of the committee who are available, and then members of the commission who are available to come out and take a walk through. if you can, we can schedule that at some point in the near future. But otherwise, Phil, do you have any other comments for the developers?
You know what? I do not. As a person who has to get on another meeting as well, you know, time to wrap it up.
Yeah, well then, I guess as the last man standing, Phil, I guess that makes you the acting chair. So if you want to call the meeting to a close, then we can. I'll move on with our long day.
Are there words that I have to say specifically, or
you can just say meetings adjourned?
Meetings adjourned.
All right, that'll do it.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thanks for everyone for sticking with us this whole time. Here's the members of the public. I appreciate you guys being here to hear this out too, and there'll be opportunity for public comment in the future. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Too.